So the leftover people are the Hmong. The Hmong are from Laos, Thailand and stuff, and they helped the United States during the Vietnam War. But in the process of all that, they end up losing their country. So the United States have been sort of really instrumental in having them sort of relocate in the United States and stuff. Any questions on the Hmong and stuff? They're really awesome. They're hardworking people. I kind of feel, akin to them. They're Asians, but we're Pacific Islanders. But they're just, and they have there's no country for them. And I think of that, it's like, oh man, at least I can come back to Guam, right? Or if you guys aren't from Guam, or from the Philippines or from other areas, you can always go back. You can always have their roots. But there's no place for their roots and stuff. And so that's why we kind of call them the leftover people. I don't know where the parents were, but the kids were like putting it in there. And it's like, oh my God, it's like, do I stop them and save their lives, or do I take a super cool news photo? What do I do? So I said, you may not want to do that and stuff. It's really hard sometimes when you're doing documentary to sort of, you got to weigh in when you can sort of step in and stuff. And so that was, and then the other one, that big panel back there when they were looking at a water fountain. I don't know if you saw some of the early photos, but they had to like get buckets of water into their homes, and usually it's a couple of football fields away wherever they're doing it. So when the kids saw like water coming out that they could drink, they're all like, oh, or something like that. It's one of my favorite things is sort of to help tell stories where it's the small guy versus the big guy. We were looking for relatives of people. So before we went to Thailand, we spent a lot of time with the Hmong in Sacramento, and they said, oh, if you find my relatives and so on. So what I would do is I think we visited about 20 families, and I would take pictures of the families in Sacramento. And then I went there with sort of like just a box of 4x6 photos. And then I thought, oh, that's my cousin, that's my aunt. And then I would give them prints and stuff. And so they would look forward to seeing them. Because this is back in the day where there was no internet, no FaceTime, no Skype.
I think the media gives voice to the voiceless just by actually being present. I think a lot of times people without a voice don't feel like they have an opportunity or an outlet or feel like anyone's listening to them. And I think rather than even communicating, you're just actually being present and you're just being there. And sometimes just being there actually empowers them to actually share their story without even saying anything, because they know that if anything, someone's watching.
I see photojournalism giving voice to, the voiceless, because not many times people want to step forward into the public. So being from behind a screen actually makes them feel like they do have the power.
The media will actually expose injustice a broader way than one person will talk by the pictures and stories of people who are willing to talk, to speak about the injustices.
There's always two sides to it, but the good part about it, it just opens up for imagination. So I think just with imagination, that's a voice in itself already.
It's one thing to talk about it and put it into words, but the media gives the picture, and people are more visual, as for me, or they're more visual. And so when you see an injustice happen before your eyes, you go through the motions of feeling it. And so for me, it's very powerful, and it emphasizes emotion behind the actions much more better than words can.
Well, the media is a very, very powerful tool throughout the world. And I think it is important for the media to do their job correctly. And it just it sheds light to these hidden places of just darkness.
You look at the picture or you look at the video and you decide, hey, that could be me, or hey, I wish there was something I could do about it.
We don't hear of these stories of other countries, of other people going through famine, going through hardships. And it's important to know what's going on in our world because we're all a part of it. We all change it.
And it really inspired me because he was able to go into the school. He was able to, be as if he was a student. He witnessed everything firsthand, whether it was, kids doing drugs, kids being bullied, or the one that caught my eye was the kids that were in the room and they were coping with each other because one of their friends committed suicide. And that really inspired me because it just showed how he went the extra mile to actually get to the root of problems, how in public schools, or not just public schools, but even private schools, how young adults, teenagers, they're experiencing a lot in our current day. That basically just proved to everybody how raw high school is. There's issues that are going on that aren't being addressed.
Because I think a lot of times the photo kind of show a little journey, and it show the Hmong people housed in a region that was once theirs, but is no longer home to them. And then at the same time brought them over to the US where they didn't realize the luxury of certain privileges that we all take for granted, like air conditioning or running water, whatever it may be. And I think sometimes if we just look past the voiceless and actually help inspire them to just create an opportunity for themselves. So it doesn't have to be something so big, it can be something so small and intimate where just having them have that opportunity allows them to actually want to go for more opportunities in the future.
Not everybody got privileges. And for him to go in there and took the pictures, that's why I like that. Everywhere I go, I'm always feel like I'm a minority. I've been traveling, and so I work together with white, black, brown, different people. And so I see those kind of things going on in the world, not knowing that it will actually happen to me or my own people.
For me, that depicted what I remember growing up, and to me was more traditional, of the woman standing in her wedding gown looking in the mirror, the old grandmother in her outside kitchen. Those were very powerful and very reminiscent of the old days that we tend to not have anymore today. Or those times our times are changing and those times are gone and have passed. So I like to remember those days. For me, the social justice is the change over time. You could see the way people have struggled back then, and then the way people still struggle today in our culture. You can tell by the way people live back then and the way people live today. And I guess with the social justice, you can see that some people choose to live that way, and some people conform to the more westernized ways today.
It was really inspirational to see the Latte side of Hinapsen because not too many people are allowed to go there. It's very, it is limited.
When I saw that, I captured my Gueluds and Guela, my ancestors, and like how they're living to what I'm doing now. So I'm trying to merge the two, trying to connect, trying to find that midpoint. That's what that picture interests me the most, and I love that picture in the back. Well, when I think of social justice, and especially with my culture, with the Latte stones and whatnot, I always think of military, clearing off land. Once again, I'm not pointing at anyone specifically. I'm pointing at the U.S. as a whole, the military, and so like how they cleared certain spots of the island and how some are still being fought for. So up to this day, like when I hear that and I think about those two things, like bringing justice to like the topic of Pagan, taking the clearing of land, the Letetseng land, where this whole spot up in Jigo is just being cleared off because They're using it for the Marines, they're using it for a firing range. And I feel like those subjects, like it brings social justice to those subjects because it comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. We gotta remember and we gotta think like, hey, how can we change that? How can we make it better, make everything better as one?
We grew up as a Chamorro, like we grew up like with different things, but then now you can go back and you could see these magazines, and I wish they continued today, so it shows you who you are. And sometimes we always question ourselves, who am I? Or what am I doing here? Or what am I supposed to do? And then when you see little articles and pictures of that, you feel a little piece of your heart, like full and whole, and you see and you're like, that's me. This is a part of me, and it just shows little pieces of the puzzle of who you are.
Some media would actually change stories, but I like the stories that actually are telling as is. Telling the truth as is, not deluded.
You know, it's interesting because here in this class for social work, we actually talk about providing an outlet for people to actually share their voice, and not just anyone's voices, but particularly their own. I think a lot of times people try to interpret things through words, or people try to interpret what the other person might be saying. And I think with photojournalism, what is so neat about it is, like I said, you're just present and you're just actually snapshotting just a moment in someone's life. And that's historical in its own. And I think just to be able to take that and for that to evoke, you know, feeling and evoke inspiration and evoke anger or whatever it is, but it's just you're actually snapshotting a moment rather than trying to create your own words to try to figure out whatever that person may be feeling. It's just naturally there. And so I think by providing photojournalism or even media opportunities, it's just allowing people to have access to other people's stories who are often marginalized by society.